My name is Clara Towson, and I'm a friend of the show.
Boom.
I am Francisca George, and I'm a friend of the show.
Perfect.
Hi, my name is Susan Leemans and I'm a friend of the show.
Boom. Yeah.
My name is Zainab Samas and I'm a friend of the show.
Boom.
Hey guys, my name is Sasha Vickery and I'm a friend of the show.
Boom.
Hi, my name is Lloyd Harris and I'm a friend of the show.
Perfect.
Hi, my name is Jan Faria and I'm a friend of the show.
Boom.
Yes.
Take one. Well done.
Hi, my name is Jasmine Paulini and I'm a friend of the show.
Wow, Jasmine, you got it in one time.
Ready? Play.
Well, hello there, and welcome to WTA Weekly. I mean, it's becoming a regular thing, but we're back, baby. We're back with Brenna, who seems to be now my regular co-host. And, well, I ain't complaining. Brenna, how are you?
Thanks for that introduction, Nick. I'm good. How are you today?
Oh, not bad, not bad. Fired up for this episode with some Southern Fried Chicken, and we're looking forward to seeing what Tennyson, the Deep South, can produce. Shut up, producer.
Yeah, I was gonna
For
say.
those who are listening to the
Well,
audio version, we are already getting spammed with abuse by our producer on our predictions from the last episode, of which, I mean, I didn't look very good coming out of it pretty early on. You...
More of the same.
Yeah, it took a while to
we'll
develop.
meet somewhere there. Yeah.
Yeah, that was you don't come to us for predictions. We're much better at analysis. So I think we should start doing that. So with that in mind, let's get analyzing. And well, I guess where best to start with the winner of the Miami Open, the runaway world number one now, Aryna Sabalenka, who, I think my summary of that run would be that she just had the quality when she needed it, didn't drop a set, and just, showed how good she was this week. Brenna, what are your thoughts on this title for Aryna Sabalenka?
Yeah, I mean, this is just the standout kind of run, the clear ability on court that I think we're all ready to see in terms of Sabalenka showing that she's, the best player on the women's tour at the moment, and she's the one to beat. Obviously, we're talking about a quick hard court, something that suits her perfectly, and that she should be the clear cut favorite on. But as we saw this week, there was no one who could really challenge her. It was kind of anytime that she was putting herself under pressure, it was due to her, unforced errors and maybe her lapses in focus. But as you mentioned, didn't drop a set, so no one was able to really put their mark on any sort of those matches.
No, and given the quality of some of the opponents that she faced, I mean, I guess maybe they're all a lot of them are opponents that she had a very favourable matchup with, but it's particularly towards the end, like Zheng and Paolini and Pegula, and historically, like, those are players who maybe struggle a little bit more to keep up with her. But I think that kind of is an example of how it is with the rest of the tour. And it's difficult to have notes on this run because, as you said, the only thing holding her back was unforced errors. And that's just something we know about Sabalenka anyway, as a player. So it's very difficult to kind of say, oh, this is interesting, this is different. And she's not done anything different, but maybe we might see her a bit differently after this week, especially now she's finally won a big title, and seems to have put the questions and the doubts that were coming sort of this early part of the season to bed.
Yeah, I mean, we're having, I guess, like a different type of conversation today because of her last two finals, which were the Australian Open final, and then obviously Indian Wells, just we'll call it 10 days ago, whatever it was. But those were two matches where she had won the first set, and things are looking good. But I
She
think
keeps
we
winning the
actually
first set in
spoke.
Australia.
Did she? Did she? Yeah, I was gonna say that one. I'm not sure. I don't know.
She won a set. Like,
Um,
that's the thing.
yeah.
Sabalenka has won a set in every final she's played since Rome, actually, last year.
It's impressive. But like we talked about it a little bit last time, is she's adding, I guess, a little bit more variety to the game. I feel like there's more thinking in terms of her strategy going about her way. Whereas I feel like maybe at times in the past where it's more like ball bashing, less thinking, and we're always hitting kind of as hard as she can. Whereas it looked a little bit more schematic, especially here in Miami. But the way she's able to break down opponents, it looked like to me a lot more patience out there. But yeah, she's just imposing her game, and she looked, happy, confident, and that's what we expect to see from her.
Do you think that's going to help her a lot on the clay in 2025? Obviously, she's never been bad on it. Multiple Madrid champion. Always has an epic with Swiatek in Madrid, it seems. Are we going to get a third? Rome, obviously, she's been to the final last year. She's been oh so close to a Roland Garros final. Yeah. And maybe it's that sort of, as her game's evolved, does that make her more dangerous now compared to previous years as we begin the clay season?
I would say so. I mean, you look at, I guess, those 3 tournaments you mentioned, with Madrid being one she succeeds at, where there's more altitude, so that obviously is going to help her hard hitting game, especially off the serve. But yeah, I mean, like I said, she's been adding a lot more to her game. She's trying more things, and I feel like there's a lot more tactics from her and her team. They've worked on a lot, even including that serve. But I feel like you have to be more confident. I will mention on the flip side is you got Iga, who has got to feel a lot of pressure right now going into the clay season because of how well she done last year in terms of winning Madrid, winning Rome, winning the French Open consecutively, I believe. So obviously Sabalenka being that opponent in the final, you do feel like on the surface you give the edge to Iga, but we've come a long way from just past year, and think about how much heavy lifting that Iga has to do. It's definitely going to be on her mind, and I think coming off this little, I mean, it was a great swing. Like that's why I think we could be talking with Sabalenka having these huge 3 titles, but it's just one of them. But she's got to be full of confidence.
Yeah, she's got to be. Yeah, she's got. I mean, Sabalenka does have a lot to lose as well. She's got 1,800 points to defend across the whole clay season when you could compare it to 1,000 finals and the quarterfinals at Roland Garros, quarterfinals I think in Stuttgart. So she's also got a big points to defend. But you're right, she's not necessarily worried about losing in 1 or 2 places in the same way as Iga is, because Iga's got so much more. And Iga is her closest rival right now, and by a reasonable margin. But speaking of rivals, it has to be said that Aryna Sabalenka is playing in an era where she's playing with a lot of very hyped players. Iga Swiatek is often referred to as a generational talent. Coco Gauff is one of the current biggest stars tennis has ever had. Certainly one of the best athletes we've ever seen in the game. Mira Andreeva is starting to build some hype behind her as well. And Sabalenka, I don't think ever really had that hype. There was always that question about, about her mentality when she was younger, about some of the technical side of things. She's obviously put a lot of them to bed, which is one of the great things about her career, is, she has evolved, she has improved, and she has worked to be number one in the world, and is now one of the few players since the new ranking system was introduced in 2009 to surpass 10,000 points. So I guess this is my roundabout way of saying, we are often asking questions about what kind of legacy Iga's going to leave behind. We're already, despite the fact she's 20, asking us kind of questions about Coco Gauff. What kind of a legacy is Aryna Sabalenka building?
I mean, I feel like it's as high as you can put it right now for me, Nick, with her ability and continuing to look to add like more, I'd say, all court variety. I feel her hard court dominance being such a strong, I guess, like dominating force, and the fact that she should, be the one to beat as we go forward over the next, 5, 6, 7 years. And that's obviously going to continue to stack up. But you look at, some of the other athletes. I mean, one of them coming to mind is Serena Williams, and just like her prowess, and I'd say arguably just like how famous she became in terms of holding U.S. Women's tennis, and being such a big part of that. I think it can be that big, depending, I think, on the all court success. But as I say, I just think like hard courts, it's something that should take her very, very far. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I would agree. I think hard courts alone is enough. I mean, we've got a contribution from Ozan, who's one of our regular contributors on the live chat, and saying that she'd be a Hall of Famer player if she retired tomorrow. I completely agree. I think you're a Hall of Famer player if you win 3 Grand Slams, and Aryna Sabalenka's won 3 Grand Slams and come damn close to 4, possibly 5. And she's got titles on clay. I don't think she's got titles on grass, but grass, there's so few opportunities, and I don't think it matters as much. And like, maybe it's inevitable she eventually wins something on that surface, be it Wimbledon, be it Berlin, be it somewhere else. So yeah, I agree with you that like she's already had a huge impact on the sport, and will be remembered as having a great career, in much the same way as other people who've won 3 or more slams have been in the past. So Aryna Sabalenka is, I think I can't put it better than Ozan or yourself. Just put it, Brenner. I think maybe, and that's why I asked the question about her legacy, because I don't think we as fans talk about that enough, because as I said, we talk about other tennis players and their legacies. Serena Williams' legacy was an obsession for decades, pretty much. So let's appreciate what Aryna Sabalenka is doing as well. Someone who was maybe less appreciative of Aryna Sabalenka was Jessica Pegula, who was once again on the receiving end of a straight sets defeat, and was so unappreciative that she stole Aryna's Margarita live on the Tennis Channel interview, which was a great moment and showed great sort of personality from both players. Aryna took it in the spirit that it was intended, which was a little bit of a friendly wind-up. But yeah, Jessica Pegula, I feel like she always has to remind us she's still in the mix, because I don't think we were really taking her seriously in our preview as a contender for Miami. And then she comes in, and not only does she make the final, but she plays some of the best tennis of anyone that whole week, including in 2 really memorable matches, her quarterfinal and her semi-final. And that's kind of where I say is like, I feel bad that we always overlook Pegula and that she has to keep proving herself. And she hung with Aryna for a bit in that final. But yeah, thoughts on Pegula's kind of status and her run, Brenner, and any other points on Aryna you might want to make, because it looked like you wanted to come in after I started speaking.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you in terms of, I feel like we do leave Jessica Pegula kind of outside of our, I guess, like high level, type of players where she's able to compete across all surfaces and she hits so cleanly. She's one of the cleaner ball strikers on the women's tour. I think it was a great tournament for her. There's a lot of positive takeaways, especially on this type of surface. And you look at her success. It comes on these little swings. You think about right before the U.S. Open. I think she went deep in Montreal and then lost in the Cincinnati final. And did well in the U.S. Open. So it's these little patches where she can get herself going, and I think she proved that. Especially, I know we'll get to it with Alex Eala. That was probably one of the matches of the tournament in terms of level. And it's just when you run up against Sabalenka, you just don't have much room for error. And I thought it was quite a good battle. She gave herself opportunities, and I think that's what you have to do against Sabalenka. But it felt like Sabalenka was just a little bit better on the bigger points, or hit those few more lines, whether it was a serve or a inside out backhand. And it just it felt like it was going to be a lot. Or take a lot to get over that hump. But I think once again has to be proud of herself, and I think that photo there sums it up in terms of, hey, I played a great tournament. Those were long physical matches, a few of them, but gave herself a good go in the final. Wasn't able to get over that hump, and just have to be happy with the way Miami ended the hard court swing.
I mean, we're talking about the hump. You've mentioned it several times. Can you see a scenario where Jessica Pegula does break that and takes down one of her big rivals in a final?
I feel like it makes me think about that legacy question we talked about with Sabalenka, Nick, where it's those type of runs and titles where you just feel like there aren't many answers. You just have to be a lot better on the day. And having so much experience now, you're not seeing Sabalenka has so much experience, and Pegula obviously having been there her fair share of times. It's just you just have to be that good. And you think about, I mentioned the fitness, you're always playing these big matches at the end of long week, 10 days, 2 weeks, whatever it is. And you gotta play some of your best tennis even when the going gets tough on the physical side of things. So the answer is, if you can tell, I think it's difficult. It's difficult.
There was a lot of chat because I did the singles final live watch along with Fergus and James, and there was some chat about which ATP player does Pegula most remind you of, and actually the obvious comparison is David Ferrer. Very solid in every department, great mover, but lacking a little bit in the matchup with the very, very best. I mean, Andy Murray was the only one Ferrer really got into a proper rivalry with. All the other three of the big three kind of had his number. I am relatively optimistic about Jessica Pegula. I think I love the way that she plays. I love how she moves. I love how she can redirect and turn defense into attack. And I think on a bad day for Arena, that could be really, really effective we know it can be effective against Iga on a bad day or a less good day. So the odds are, given how things are, if your opponent's less than their best, and Pegula's on, that's not necessarily who you want to be playing if you're less than your best, even if you are the best. It needs things to fall into place for her, but I think it's very possible. And I really appreciate Jessica Pegula. What might frustrate me a little bit about her is she only seems to play her best in North America, at least at the moment. Other than Berlin last year, a lot of our highlights are coming on North American hard courts, particularly in Canada. Is that a fair assessment, or am I overgeneralizing here?
No, I think that's actually a good point. I think it's a good point. I mean, I already brought it up in terms of she loves this little, it works out well. I think the tour is designed well in that sense where The back-to-back Masters kind of being in the same location. And obviously, as we're talking about it, 4 of them being in North America on hard courts, that suits her game well. Despite I think Montreal's a little bit slower and Indian Wells obviously very slow. But you mix in Cincinnati and Miami there. I think those are tailor made for her game, and then obviously the courts at the U.S. Open are similar as well. So it's just a mix of good locations, good support, and I think good conditions that suit her well. The clay, do you have any hope for her in this clay season?
I think she's better on clay than most people give her credit for. I remember her getting to the quarterfinals of the French at least once. I think she got to the Madrid final in 2022 and lost a very nervy match with Ons Jabeur. Obviously, like she won Guadalajara. That was a slow hard court, not quite clay. But I think her game works well on all surfaces. I think that she's the kind of person who can get into a grind. I'm interested to see how she does in Charleston this week, how she recovers from Miami. But yeah, do I think that she's going to be one of the leading contenders on the surface? No. Do I think she's going to be tough to beat? Yes. And I think that is probably about fair for where she's at with the clay.
Agreed. So should we get into one of the bigger stories of the week in
Probably
Alexandra Eala?
The story of the week. Let's be honest. I mean, everything was about Alex Eala this week, and I think her run to break into the top 100 makes her worthy of the Jakob Bobro Award for this week. Across the WTA and the ATP, there was no other story that was worthy of being recognised in honour of someone who was very passionate about seeing younger players break through. And what a breakthrough. I have one word in my notes when it comes to Alex Eala, and it's wow, exclamation mark. And honestly, I was so impressed by her insane confidence and bravery across the whole run, taking out 3 Grand Slam champions. And she was not phased at all. She didn't seem phased at all, other than maybe the end of the first set against Pegula. But yeah, this was, as you say, the biggest story of this tournament for multiple reasons.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with you, Nick. It was just it kept she kept defying these odds. But I think her play style really, captures her mentality. And not that I want to compare it to Rafa because obviously that's a stretch, but obviously being a Rafa Academy prospect and being a lefty and just tenacious defense, mixing up the heights of the ball, impressive movement, no giving up. It's and she plays with, a serious aggression and, determined kind of mentality out there on court. And I think she has a lot of confidence. So it was a lot of fun to watch.
Oh yeah, totally. You said her game reminds you of Rafa. I'm trying to pin it down because a lot of people said it reminded her of Leylah Fernandez.
Totally.
Very energized, lefty, bit of a counterpuncher, but she can hit so deep. She is able to generate some power. Her strokes are so smooth. It's just a little bit different. And also she's taller than Leylah. And that kind of throws me off a bit. There's elements of Raducanu I throw in there as well. I guess it depends. There's some obvious things that need developing, like the serve. The serve is currently a bit underpowered, and it is a vulnerability. But she's still 19. She turns 20 in May. How excited are you about her prospects, given all the things that maybe we're talking about with the potential that we're seeing in her game right now?
Yeah, I mean, I'm excited. Especially, with kind of where the tour's at. I kind of look at this as we go into, I guess, the second little part. I don't know how many. I say you can divide the season into like quarters, but it's got to be impressive. And I'm big on variety in terms of a player. Being able to adapt to who they're playing and playing with different styles. And I just think her game it speaks a lot to that kind of ability where it seems like her game will transition to clay really really nicely, very smoothly. But you think about just kind of her ability and mentality and attitude. I think that's what's going to help propel her up the rankings. She's such a competitor, but
Mm.
obviously we saw kind of how proud of herself that she was, and she was, gracious in defeat. But just like excited about all the accomplishments she did make this
Her,
week in Miami.
her losing moment in that semi-final was one of the highlights for me of that tournament because, like, most players kind of will grab their bag and walk off court and need to process, and she just sat back and took in the support, absolutely loving it, and appreciated like how well she had done despite losing what had been a very, very intense match. And I think, I talked about her confidence, her bravery, as you said, in her game. If she stays brave and remembers to love the game, win or lose, which she did this week, that's going to keep her a very, very strong player, regardless of any technicalities. She's going to be a ruthless competitor. And I think that's very, very exciting for the game of tennis, as is the sudden interest in the game that's come from the Philippines now. And I'm only saying this based on the fact that when I talked about the match with the semi-final, I put a tweet out and it got 1K likes, and most of it was, and the vast majority came from Filipino accounts, as what I can assume. Like, there's a nation that just discovered this sport, and I think that's really, really exciting.
Totally, totally. And I do want to circle back to hear a little bit more on your thoughts in terms of we make like the Leila Fernandez comparison, and I agree. Kind of like a grinder mentality that has a little bit of maybe surprising power, but is able to counterpunch so well. But it's been kind of I wouldn't say fall off, but it's felt a little bit of like a stall from Fernandez where she hasn't really progressed. Do you think Eala can get into that, top 40-ish range and hang out there? Would she be able to, continue to make that jump as she develops? Or
I
what's
think so,
I
yeah.
guess realistic kind of scenario, let's say over the next year or two?
I think so. Look, Leila Fernandez is hanging around the top 30 right now. And if you look at, how she performs, she's very sort of, she struggles to get a run together, but she usually wins one, maybe two games a tournament. And I think Eala has very similar qualities that will keep her in that range. I think also there's possibly a little bit more potential because she has got people who've gone before her to kind of learn from. And I think it's all going to come down to how she develops her game, and sort of what kind of highs and lows she experiences in her career. I certainly think that she's been hyped for a long time as a prospect. She's been getting IMG wildcards for a year or two now. I think now we see why. I think she's going to be in the mix and for seeded Grand Slams, at least for a good few years when she gets up there. I certainly think that top 40, top 30 jump is well within her. And I think that's super, super exciting. Because I was going to ask whoever came on, like that Leila Fernandez comparison. Is there anything that you think she could learn from Leila's experience? Because their runs were very similar. Leila's breakout run was very similar to that US Open a few years back.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, like obviously, staying healthy is most important. But I do think about like her ability to translate her game across surfaces. Like what surprised me most is like I was kind of like, when is this level gonna drop? Is she gonna start making mistakes? And she just kept making balls. And I think like that consistency on the tour can take you so far. Um, in my mind, I'm thinking a little bit about, like Coco Gauff and the mentality getting in the way and how many, unforced errors unravel and it leaks into the serve. But Eala is like so comfortable to just, roll in the serve and play out the point. Like her patterns of play are so consistent, strategic, and especially being a lefty, like it's always, posing a threat. So, a lot of fun this week having such a breakout run and, looking forward to her season or the rest of the season in the clay swing.
One last question. We said that Pegula versus Eala was one of the matches of the tournament, or you said that. I'm going to say it was the clear match of the tournament. I know Raducanu Navarro was pretty good as well. Yeah, I would say that in terms of the drama of the match and the consistent quality all the way through and kind of what was on the line, I would definitely say that that was the match of the week or at the tournament. Do you think we're still going to be talking about it as one of the matches of the year? Or is that a bit of a stretch?
I think it might be a stretch for a few reasons. One, kind of our timing here. I think like if Pegula went and maybe won it all, it would have a little bit more of a tick there. But yeah, I mean, I just think like here we are almost at, like I said, like a third crazy run of the season. That match had it all, and it like you said, it was consistent quality throughout, and it was such a fight till the end. So I don't know. I mean, it was a semifinal though, so like that's where.
And I think the other thing about what it had was drama
Right.
about it, and like there were momentum swings within every set. Each set was super close, even the 6-3 one. Like Eala was pushing to break back when Pegula was serving it out, and Eala could have won set one. Pegula could have won set two. All three sets could have gone either way, and I can't think of any other match this tournament that kind of had that. So in the women's side. So for me, I think that's where we're at.
Good call. All right, shall we head to the other semifinal where it was Jasmine Paolini versus Sabalenka?
I'm gonna brag a little bit because I'm the only one of the two of us who got a semi-finalist right out of
and you should.
Out of the two of us, especially since not a lot of people were giving Paolini much credit, and I was like, that draw was she's not playing badly. Like she's getting last 16 runs in regularly in every single big tournament she plays. A deeper run felt inevitable to me, and this looked like a draw that she could capitalize on. So yeah, thoughts on Paolini's run here, Brenna, and also her season so far. Oh my word, that is a photo. For those who are listening back, we are now currently looking at a photo of Sabalenka and Paolini at the net shaking hands after their semi-final and just realizing the height difference between them.
I think that was kind of one of the better stories to come out of kind of this week when she played Osaka and essentially just wowed Osaka with that forehand and how much pop it has. That ability at that height, it's just so impressive. And I love Jasmine because of how much of a fighter she is. And yeah, I mean, it was great. I think it was a great week for her. There you see her fired up, and I don't think she played a bad semifinal. I don't want to jump the gun. We'll talk about it, but like I feel like she had to be happy with herself. It was just kind of too good on the other side. Season has been, okay. Obviously like just having that breakout year, we've talked about it on a couple shows, but It's definitely hard to follow that up. So just kind of going week to week, being realistic, trying to focus on yourself, be in the moment, focus on the present, and she's done a good job.
Yeah, I would agree. And by the way, yeah, that Osaka match was, yeah, one of the highlights of the tournament. Like last 16, bam, highlight, like great match to watch. And yeah, I agree. I think like this season for her, I think when I thought about, I wrote about expectations for players at the beginning of the year for Talking Tennis, and I kind of said, let's set expectations for Paolini about top 20-ish, like sort of top 20 kind of performance. I think that's probably where consistently she's performing, and runs like this are going to help with that. And yeah, I think on her day, she's she's always excited to watch, but on her day, she is able to open up the court and use the weapons that she has, which are always underappreciated. Obviously, there are some developments here. In the last few hours, it's been announced that she's actually split with her coach, Renzo Furlan, after 10 years. So, they've obviously done a lot of great work together and a lot of hard work getting her to, that top 10 spot. Sounds fairly amicable, but that may be an indication of, regardless of who ended it, whether it was mutual or whatever, that she is looking to make an important step to keep herself at the top of the game.
Yeah, you nailed it right there, Nick. I think obviously like 10 years is a long time, and having such a, I think it's a good moment to break that off if it were to happen, because yeah, I mean she's playing some of the best tennis of her life over the past 16 months, and yeah, as you mentioned, I think she's 28, I believe,
Yeah,
and
almost
it
29 now, actually.
almost 29. Yeah, that's so. You look like you're moving into a new swing in terms of the clay, and you're looking to add more things to your game, and maybe just a fresh voice, fresh eyes, in terms of hey, here's my game, and let's nail on some of the weaker points, and how can I take this kind of new confidence, new energy in my box, and take that with me and play with it on court.
Yeah. I'm interested to see where she goes with it. And we've seen in my mind, actually, a good comparison is Pegula, because she kind of reached her peak at a similar age to Paolini has, and also has taken a step of changing a long time coach, or a very fruitful coaching relationship in the last sort of year or so at age sort of 30, to see what that could do for her game and moving her on. And I think the fact that she's still at the top of the game is going to be good news for Paolini. So yeah, and I think she thoroughly deserves to be at the top of the game. I think she's such she's a great match winner. She's a great match player. She's always a fighter, and someone who can win as many matches as her consistently deserves a lot of respect.
Totally.
Okay. Speaking of someone else, speaking of other players, I think we should move on to one of the other stories from Miami. It's kind of inevitable, because whenever she plays, she always starts the conversation. And that's Iga Swiatek, who is in quarterfinals. Was looking kind of patchy, but beat some relatively decent opponents, like Elina Svitolina was a good match they played a good match at the night session in the last 16. And then, yeah, Alex Eala came and shook her to her core in the quarters. But there's just a lot of discussions about Iga Swiatek at the minute, online, in the media. And I think I think, yeah, the kind of question everyone keeps saying is how much does it matter that Iga Swiatek seems to be performing below her capability?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is such a tough one to I'd say breakdown because here we are, we're in, our last hardcourt event with all of, the expectations for Ika. She moves into the clay season, not only expectations, but pressure. And as you talked about, Nick, like the people, the outsiders, the media who, push that on her, especially after making the coaching change, looking to improve on quicker surfaces. That was kind of the main, goal as she joined with Wim. But, now that's come and gone. I thought she was playing a good match, as you said. The match against Svitolina, I was actually at that match and thoroughly enjoyed it. It was a great ball striking. Movement was on full display from both players. And, as we talked about Svitolina, like such a consistent player, always tough to defeat and doesn't go away. So I thought that was a great win. In terms of the Eala loss, I think it's definitely it's kind of hard to even accept, or like you have to see it to believe it type of thing, because it was such a big upset. But she played into Eala patterns of play. She wasn't, I guess, as good as she needed to be on second serve. She fired a bunch of winners, but at times just wasn't able to hold her serve. That was I guess the biggest thing for me is she held twice in that match. So that was something that was worrisome.
Yeah, Eala was all over the returns. I know she was really stepping in. She kind of Garcia'd Iga, really. This took her apart in the same way as Garcia did a few years ago, or threatened to a couple of times since. I think Iga will learn from that. She'll know what to expect next time. I think there's also an element of how Eala handled that match. I think this defeat will age well, because it obviously will depend on Eala's career trajectory, but certainly I think, like the Noskova defeat last year at the Australian Open, it will probably age well. I think for me with Swiatek, because I had a lot of thoughts and trying to, do you know what? It's not worth trying to kind of, I'd love to get a coach on and talk to them or talk to a player about it. But I think where I'm kind of at with this is this. Iga Swiatek, in comparison to the rest of the field, is still playing really, really well. She has got to the minimum quarterfinals of every single event that she's played. That is solid top 10 or above ranking results. She's obviously, you could talk about the manager defeats or whatever. In comparison to previous years, it's not as good a start. And, if you want trophies to be your main measure, then obviously it's not great. Iga herself would probably give herself a B for the year. I would say, if you're going to grade it, it'd be a B so far for Q1. For this opening hardcourt swing. But if you look at her overall performance throughout the season so far, I'd say only 3 players have done better than her, really. She is, and that's Arena, Madison, and Mirror. So when you look at it in that way, in comparison to the rest of the field, she's still, and look at the way she got through those draws, she kind of cruised through. Even holding off a really tough match with Svitolina in Miami. So, yeah, that's kind of where I am with Iga Swiatek. Is it depends on what you're comparing her to when you're kind of drawing an assessment. And when you're kind of comparing Mount Kilimanjaro to Mount Everest, that's going to be a challenge. I'm hoping those two aren't the same place. But, yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with Swiatek at the minute. Is she's fine. She's performing in line with my expectations. Again, in the piece that I wrote, said that she just needs to do enough to qualify for the WTA finals. She's doing more than enough for that trajectory. Clay is going to be where the real test is going to come. That's where we're really going to see where she's at relative to how she should be. But game-wise, how she handles herself, yeah, I think I understand where she's coming from. I respect where she's coming from. I wouldn't tell her to change anything. She's just got to figure out how to consistently play her best when she can. Because when she plays her best, I think only really Arena can be a problem.
Agreed. Agreed. And I'll just do a quick little summary there. I think we kind of know what level we're going to get from Iga. It's a true kind of baseline, and it really only can get better, not much worse. And I feel like you just have to, tip your cap to some of these players in terms of, Maddie Keys and Dreva, who just, peaked really well and played some big moments really well, and that resulted in big results. But maybe she wishes she had a title. The only one I would have, almost, drew her in would be Indian Wells, and Andreeva played awesome. So, like you said, enough to get herself in the WTA finals. It's a solid hard court swing, and now it's time for her to go do what she does best.
There's part of me that wonders what would have happened, say, if Keys and Andreeva hadn't caught fire at Australian Open Indian Wells, what those two Arena Iga finals would have been like.
Right.
Because you would have had, that would have been Iga's best chance against Arena on a fast, hard court, because Arena was a little patchy in Australia, although she raised her level to try and match what Madison was bringing. And Andreeva got under Arena's skin at Indian Wells. And I think on a slow, hard court, Iga could have done the same. So it's one of those things. It's like, it's all what ifs. Arena could have won both matches. And actually something I was thinking about was, so at this point in the year, Iga still hadn't won a trophy, but if she got to the final of all 5 big events that have happened so far and lost to Arena in every single one of them, the conversation would be very different, I think.
You're right. I mean, that's where it's like on a quick hard court, I do give this slight edge to Sabalenka. That's me putting my analysis cap on as opposed to, who I would really like to see coming through. But that's why I feel like Indian Wells would be the only one where it's like, okay, here's a chance. But yes, you're right. I think we could have actually had a lot of those finals, and we would be having different conversations. But until the next swing.
Until the next swing. Hey, it's all about when it's Iga. Clay is when the spotlight gets bigger, but it's also where she thrives the most. And
exactly.
Iga Swiatek on a clay court is just one of, you just have to like bask in its awesomeness, just how good she is when that forehand really gets going on clay. Okay, speaking of some of the people we've mentioned, actually, let's do a bit of a wrap up on some of the big names. I think it'll be a relatively quick wrap up before we look ahead, and maybe also wrap up one of the other big stories from Miami. So Mira Andreeva, round 3, her winning streak came to an end against Amanda Anisimova. If I'm honest, though, I think really she lost against her own body and against drama. And that's no offense to Anisimova. I think Anisimova made it a great match between the two of them, and is a great competitor and on her day, fantastic, like brilliant opponent. But it just wasn't Mira Andreeva's day. It wasn't Mira Andreeva's tournament. She won the doubles with Diana Schneider. I think she is still very, very much a threat. And I don't think this result of round 3 is enough to pour cold water on the hype yet.
I'm with you there, Nick. I think you're spot on in terms of the body. She did look tired, and I think we both said how Anisimova, she's got the weapons, especially on a quick low bouncing court, and that was on full display. It wasn't going to be an easy match, and I mean there's some drama there as well, but moral of the story for me, and I think for you, is like, she's playing at such a high level. She's already shown us so much this year, and in terms of her moving forward, there's a lot to be excited about. Even going to the clay where she can do so well. Her weapons are continuing to develop. She's a really smart player, and she's got she's just got a lot of variety and a lot to work with. So I'm very optimistic for her.
I'm very excited to see what she does in Madrid, because if you think about it, she's been to the quarterfinals on her first 2 visits as an underdeveloped player. With the step forward she's taken this year, I mean, we're kind of getting a few weeks ahead of ourselves, but I reckon we're going to be talking about her as a title contender along with Swiatek and Sabalenka at the next 1000.
She definitely deserves to be in that conversation. And yeah, I mean, those are good conditions for her, where she's able to use that big serve to her advantage, but the variety that she can use on the clay, it's a difficult matchup.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, she loves those conditions. I think everything plays well for her and for her game. That's quick assessment with Andreeva. I don't think there's much else that we can really dig out with her other than we're still really, really excited about her. And obviously she's still playing Stuttgart in between now and Madrid as well. Other players with kind of big names to talk about. Madison Keys. Where were you with Madison Keys hype? I think her loss to Eala has aged well with the run Eala went on. I think maybe physically again it got to Keys, but also I think the way Eala was playing was a problem for anyone. So I don't think there's any kind of, oh, hold on, is that a flash in the pan kind of thing for Keys? I think we've got to wait and see with that one.
Yeah, I mean, I'd even go back to the her first round match against Evanescence. Like, that's a tough battle. Her ball striking was still on full display. I'm with you in terms of she kind of just got rushed by Eala. That level was insane. And yeah, it did look like her legs had a little bit gone from her. She did look a little bit tired and spent, and was kind of searching for winners. But Eala was continuing to extend points and just continue to frustrate her. So yeah, I mean, I think it, like you said, it aged well. So I'm not up in arms about it. And she went far enough in Indian Wells, and now she gets to take a little deep breath. But we do have obviously Charleston on the horizon for her.
Yeah, she's playing in a few days, the second seed in Charleston. So I'm interested to see how she manages that. I think then she is having a break. I don't think she's playing Stuttgart off the top of my head. No, she's not. I think Keys and Rebecca are both skipping Stuttgart. So that's going to be where her break kind of happens before Madrid, a couple of weeks off. Yeah, I think that, and Madrid is also conditions where she has done well in the past. So I'm interested to see where she kind of comes out on the clay, because she's not bad on the clay, even though it doesn't necessarily suit her game. Madison Keys has had a French Open semi-final run. I think she's good on all surfaces. Let's not underrate her yet. I'm still think that she's going to be one of the names we're going to be talking about for a while.
Totally.
Last name.
Let's see here.
Last
Go
name.
for it.
Before we move on to the last story of Miami. Coco Gauff. Anything new to say about Coco Gauff post Miami? Other than, I mean, like, she got out scrapped by Magdalenette. Really kind of beat Gauff for her own game of winning a messy match. I think Coco is currently in a bit of a crisis of confidence, and she'll start playing well when she gets that confidence back. It just hasn't happened yet. But we're in danger of kind of having the same conversation about her over and over again.
Yeah, I mean, that's how it feels, Nick. Like we were talking about, is the ability, coming, is the double fault kind of count, is that rolling into her game a bit and affecting her not only like her strategy, but her confidence in her own shots, and that's what is the worrisome thing for me. But as we talk about, like, how much she can just be firing, and when things are going her way, she looks like such a tough opponent. But yeah, I mean, you talked about how she can win ugly on the last show, and It was looking like one of those matches where she was down a break and then got it back, and you're like, all right, here we go. We're in kind of a tussle here, but the unforced error count just continued to creep up and ultimately got away from her.
Yeah, I would agree with that. So we'll see where it's at. She loves clay. If it wasn't for Iga Swiatek, she'd probably be a 2 or 3-time Roland Garros champion by now. So let's see how she does on that surface. I think she'll still be a contender there. Right, last big story of Miami. And this is where all the British people start tuning in. Emma Raducanu is in the quarterfinals at Miami. She beat Emma Navarro in one of the matches of the tournament. She then followed up with kind of wins against Kessler and Anisimova, who, yes, were probably compromised, but Raducanu kind of went out with the determination to make their lives hell and did just that, and then went toe-to-toe with Pegula for 2 sets and then maybe faded a bit in the third. Probably one of the most positive losses I've seen from her in a long time. This is the best I've seen from Raducanu for a while. Have we seen how good she can be, or is there more in there?
I do think there's more in there, Nick. I mean, I don't want to jump the gun in terms of how quick this can progress, because one of the biggest, I think, stories coming out of it as well is the fact that she still doesn't have, her coaching box set in stone. And so that'll make like a huge difference for her, not only in her play, but, just like her confidence on court, and knowing she has the support there. But I mean, yeah, it was amazing to watch. I got to watch a bunch of her matches in person too, and one thing that stood out to me was, her movement, her fitness ability, was on full display there, and she, moving well, hitting cleanly, and it felt like, in that Navarro match, she was going to pull it out. She was going to go for it on those big points, and she looked kind of fearless to me, and that's a big quality that can take her very far, as she continues to, build off of this. As you said, it's been a while since she's played, this consistently, and that I have, a lot of positive things to say, and I'd love to hear your take on kind of the Pegula match and what you made of that.
Yeah, I think first set was decided by the one break, and the rest of that match, it felt like Emma was keeping in step with Pegula, and then was a lot more proactive. Pegula kind of stayed with her and then took her opportunity to make that set close, but Raducanu closed that one out. I was very, like you, I was impressed by the movement, the physicality, and like her mentality, which hasn't really been in question during matches. I've always felt like, even when watching the matches she's lost, like she gets frustrated, but she's trying to make it a contest, and she's trying to make it a fight. And when she's up for a fight with all of herself, then watch out, because she's going to be dialed in and trying to win all those big points. And we saw what she did to Anisimova in that first set. So I'm interested to see where that goes. I also think that when she's being proactive, like, she is a clean hitter, and when she's hitting cleanly, actually she's got some weapons. And she was able to deploy those really, really well across the whole tournament, including against Pegula for as much as she could. I do think final set she ran out of gas a little bit. I think Pegula does that to you. It was late, yeah, it was a tough match up to that point. But yeah, Raducanu kind of clawing her way back into the top 50. And I think she will be looking forward to Wimbledon. Obviously, historically, clay for her hasn't worked. She likes Madrid, but that's probably about it. And I think she's going to want to hit the ground running when it comes to the grass season. She won't want to necessarily wish the clay season was over. She's going to want those points. Yeah, I think it's an interesting time to peak for Emma, given we're coming up to the point of the season where we don't necessarily expect her to do that well.
Right. I mean, That's why it's a little bit of I guess it's kind of like an open situation for her where there's not too much expectation. I'm definitely interested to follow the coaching situation closely, and monitor that. Once that's locked in, how can things change. But yeah, I mean, like it's good to see her playing well again. And as you mentioned, I was loving how clean she was striking the ball, and especially against an opponent like Navarro, where you're kind of playing up against a wall. And a lot of balls are going to come back. You need to kind of show your prowess there and show why you're the better player. And Navarro's backhand is really good, but Raducanu was able to win that battle on both wings, and that's what ultimately propelled her forward and winning that match and making this great run.
Yeah, agreed. I think that's going to be that's a big foundation for her. Looking forward to seeing what she does next. Speaking of next, I think we hit the hour mark, so we should probably start wrapping up. I think there's a lot of other discussion points we could bring out of here, but maybe leave those for another time. Because Charleston's got underway now. And I have to say, Charleston, if you're a US fan, go watch it, because 8 out of the top 10 Americans are playing. Literally only missing Coco Gauff and McCartney Kessler. And 13 of the top 16, really. Like, it's pretty stacked US field in the US. And that's when you include the kind of guest players, like such as Zheng Qinwen, who's going to be playing, Daria Kasatkina, Deanna Schneider, Yelena Ostapenko, and Belinda Bencic, who is a former champion here in Charleston. So in a sort of Americans versus the world kind of setup, I think it's looking pretty clever. And obviously, those American players include, Keys, Collins, Kenin, Pegula's the top seed, Anisimova. So I think that's going to be a fun tournament to watch, and it usually is.
Yeah, totally. And like you look at the field, everyone outside of Pegula, and you could call Zhang going out in the quarter there. Everyone went out of Miami pretty early, so they've had some time to get their rest and get accustomed to the surface, because it is a little different. Not many tournaments are played on. I mean, depending on what you call it, it's the green clay or it's hard true. So it's quicker than a regular clay court, but still a different surface. So it should be fun. I'm excited. Obviously, yeah, like you mentioned, the weather's getting better in Charleston, and then you got all the top American women there. So it should be a fun one. Are there any names that you're excited to follow?
I mean, Robin Montgomery is one of them. If we're seeing this on the screen on the live broadcast, she's going to be she's cruised through her first round. She's playing Danielle Collins in the second round, so that's going to be a fun match. I'm looking forward to that one. I think pretty much I'm interested to see what Bencic can do. I think it's interesting to see what kind of season Zheng Qinwen is building, because she's got to a few quarterfinals now in the 1000s. So let's see what happens with the field a bit more open. I'm interested to see, how Pegula recovers. I'm interested to see how much Keys has got in the tank. I think there's definitely a few names in the mix there that are worth keeping an eye on. So yeah, I guess I'm excited because it's a great venue and it's a great field overall. Just to throw some names out there. In comparison to Bogota, which is the 250 happening this week, and there are no top 50 players there. So that's giving kind of almost challenger vibes for that tournament. But it's a fun venue. I'd say the name I'm most keeping an eye on there is Iva Jovic, who is actually playing there instead of in Charleston. And obviously she's kind of this promising US teen talent, and I'm interested to see what kind of progress she can make in Bogota. Marie Bushkova being the top seed, if anyone was curious.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, it's a lead up event, an opportunity for some of the lower ranked women to play in a less competitive draw and get a feel for it. For me, a couple names I like. are Emiliana Arango. She's got great clay court, ability, and that'll be fun to watch. And then obviously Camila Osorio, she's made her mark at a fair share of events, and she's a player that will do well on the clay as well. I do want to highlight one name out of Charleston. I'm a big fan of Peyton Starnes, and looking at her draw, let's see, she a little bit lower ranked there in the Americans, but we talked about having so much talent. Yeah, she's the 16th seed there, but she would match up with Pegula if they both won their second round matchup, and that would be a great opportunity to pounce on a more tired, more fatigued Jessie Pegula and maybe make a run there. But definitely love her ability, especially the forehand. It's super big, so she's a player that I'm excited to watch.
Peyton Stearns is always box office. She's super exciting to watch, and hopefully she can string together some wins and go deep in Charleston. That's a good shout on that one to keep an eye on for her. All right, I think that wraps us up. Thank you so much for coming back on, Brenna.
Thank you for having me, Nick.
And thanks everyone for watching and listening, whether you watched live or listening to us back or whichever. Always a pleasure doing this with you all. We will be back next week to wrap up all the stories from Charleston and see if any of the names we've identified from Charleston or Bogota makes some waves. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. Keep an eye out for any other updates we might be producing this week. And I'll catch you on the next episode of WTA Weekly. Until then, take care and keep talking tennis.
If you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit that like button. Don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell so you don't miss out on all things tennis.